My beautiful, beautiful, powerful listeners, it's time for another episode of the Powerful Lake Startup Stories podcast. And are you in for a treat today? No, probably not. I can't even say it with a straight face. You guys, it's so fun. The people that I get to meet and bring on here for you. So, who I have with me today is Jessica Love, the CEO and founder of the Courage Revolution. And I mean, what's not to love in that alone? You know, it's just such great branding naturally, which is so fun. And so, Jessica, stripped back to pure self as she went through life, kind of doing the book of life and doing the things that she's supposed to do, um, it just started to get tight and constricted, and it was, time to change. And so she had a spiritual awakening that she'll take us through, and it opened up her access to seeing the world in a bigger way and led her to founding a company, leaving a full-time job as a nurse, nursing career, and over a decade in that. So like a big shift. It's a significant change. To starting an online coaching business and selling off her life and moving across the country, to start fresh and start something new and wonderful. So, welcome to the show, Jessica. I'm excited to have this conversation with you and talk about courage and growth and self-love and all the things.
Yes, thank you, Mia, so much. I'm excited to be here and it feels nice to be on the other side. I mean,
Yeah, it
I
does.
wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for that for a little bit. And then I finally kind of just started like putting myself out there more and I was like,
Uh-huh.
okay, I like this.
Uh-huh.
Like I can do this.
Yeah, it is a total different energy when you're a guest instead of hosting, right? I'm always a bit more relaxed as a guest. Yeah, it's nice to let that veil down. So, I mean, take us through it. Like you came from a Mormon upbringing, you were ticking all the boxes, you got married, you had this career, and then what was it that started to cause a rub, that started to cause an awakening in your life?
I will tell you, I feel like I'm really grateful for part of me that's the part of me that has always been there and that
Yeah.
always has like kept me rooted in myself, no matter how far away from that I
Mhm.
have gone.
Mhm.
Because even since I was younger, I remember that I just didn't subscribe to what everyone else did, like my
Mhm.
whole life. Even from when I was a kid, my mom was like, even just as soon as you were born, you were like my little old soul child that you never really fit in with kids your age. And you always like blended in really well with adults and just was always very different and very wise beyond my years. And I'm the third one in a family of four kids. So
Mhm.
then it's kind of like you're like kind of sort of a middle child, but I was the first girl. So my brothers are really really close in age. They're a day shy of a year apart in age, so they're
Oh,
the same
wow.
age for one day.
Mhm.
And so they were a lot of trouble together, and then I was a couple years after that. So then it was like the freaking golden child. So
Uh-huh.
it is very fascinating how who we become as a child, right? Like the environment that shapes us, how we start to just pick up along the way a lot of identities that aren't truly us. It's like, who did you need to become in the environment that you were in to feel loved, to survive, whatever it is, right? So I picked up a lot of these false identities, which I didn't know
Mhm.
were false identities. And this has been very much a healing back of all the layers throughout the years. And I will tell you, it is wild how fast things start to happen when you really let go of all the ties that bind you.
Yeah.
So I didn't subscribe to a lot of the religious stuff. I did what I was told. I was a good
Uh,
girl.
right, right,
It's like, okay, we're going to church. But I definitely
right.
grew up in a very, like, what they call Jack Mormon family because my dad was a convert in his 20s.
Okay.
So he wasn't like devout in the religion like my mom was. But my
Mhm.
mom, even though my mom was devout in the religion, she didn't she experienced life a little different than my dad, and she saw what it was like when people didn't go to church and didn't have the religion to like kind of hold them together because
Mhm.
her dad kind of went off the deep end in that way.
Mhm.
And so then, obviously my grandma got divorced and remarried at some point in time. So
Mm.
my mom was really in the religion. My dad was a convert. So we had this kind of mixture of like very blurred lines,
Mhm.
where it was like, okay,
Mhm.
yeah, one day we're like following all the rules and the next day we're
Mhm.
not. So I was already in that environment where
Okay.
I could exist on either side whenever it was necessary. So my parents weren't crazy, crazy strict with forcing us to be involved in everything associated with the religion, especially in terms of like seminary, right? Like seminaries during the week, and that's that hour before school that you go, and
Mhm.
it's basically like Bible study.
Okay.
My parents never really forced us to go to that. They tried to tell us to, and then we just slept in the car, and so then they stopped trying. And then,
Okay. Smart.
yeah, yeah, it was funny.
Break the system.
So then my parents were also very strict with the rules. So my brothers broke a lot of rules. So then it came down really strict on me.
Um,
And same kind of thing. It's like I wasn't that kid that was trying to rebel. I just wanted to learn for myself.
mhm.
I just wanted to have the choice. And so then I started dating someone when I was 15 that was completely opposite than everything I knew. And that was actually appealing to me.
Mhm.
And I've told my mom to this day that I swear if I would have had more freedom to like make my own choices, I never would have chosen someone like that. But that was also just part of my spiritual journey, right? Part of my path in my life. So he grew up on the back of a Harley Davidson, and his dad used to roll with Hell's Angels Motorcycle Club, right?
It's
So
right out of a book, right? Like
very
Mormon family, lots of kids, boop, rebellious, but not necessarily. You're
exactly,
just exploring, right? You're just looking for
exactly.
other
So
things.
he was like my ticket to like get out of the house and experience life a little more.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of like you mix that with the concepts of the religious part of relationships, where it's kind of like you date to get married, and the person you marry,
Mhm.
you don't get divorced kind of thing.
Mhm.
So then it was like, okay, we'd been together since we were teenagers. So then I go off to college and we broke up for like a week, but then we basically
Mhm.
stayed together, and I came
Mhm.
back home and we stayed together since then. So that was just a lot of like, okay, checking the boxes in life where my parents are like, you're going to go to college. Your siblings, they're not
Mhm.
going to do something like that. We're depending on you to go to
Yeah, right,
college and make
right.
something of yourself, right? Because I
Mhm.
was like the golden child.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I was very unconsciously just like doing what I was told, slash like a little rebellious, right? So then I came home from college and I ended up moving in with him and his family, which that didn't go over well. So, years into like us being together, and, I graduated school. He was in school and working too. So, yes, I saw differences with us, but it wasn't any of those things that weren't like figure outable. Basically, it's
Okay.
like, yes,
Yeah.
he had a very different upbringing, but he said he wanted a different life. And this is something that I've learned as I've gotten older, that people have to really want it from their core, and they
Mhm.
have to be willing to be able to like heal and grow and like leave that stuff there to be able to move on.
Yeah.
And it's like he never really did all that. He just ignored it and said it didn't happen. And some stuff came out like later on throughout our relationship that his family had told me that kind of made sense, that like there was
Mhm.
a possibility that he was molested as a kid
Yeah.
and some things, and it made sense in our relationship of like some of the issues we had. So then of course,
Yeah.
we're in our 20s, we're going to school, we're working. We were definitely more like roommates then, but we're like very much adulting, right? Well, then we both graduate school, we get engaged, we buy a house that's out of the city from where he grew up. I have lived in multiple cities throughout my life, so it doesn't really bother me. My family, we're very tight knit regardless, right? So didn't think anything of it for me, but for him, he could not hang. Like he didn't like change.
Mhm.
And I was working a lot, and I
Mhm.
was working a lot of night shift, and I didn't know that he didn't like being alone.
Mhm.
So then it created a lot of problems in our relationship. And it's interesting, like I said, like your conditioning, how you bring it into certain parts of your life.
Yeah.
And in that part of my life, I was so deep in the conditioning of marriage is hard, relationships are hard. You do whatever it takes to make that person happy. And so
Mhm.
I was carrying the burden of his happiness
Mhm.
unconsciously like didn't know that this wasn't normal, right? And so I was basically carrying the weight of the relationship. And then at a certain point in time, it's like, okay, this was like way too much. We had some drama before we got married.
Mhm.
And so we split for a couple weeks. And then it was like I had the come to Jesus moment to him. And we had never had any issues, never had any drama. So that was like our first big like wake up call.
Mhm.
So said, are we going to do this or not? Otherwise, like we're splitting assets because at this point we owned a home, all lots of
Mhm.
property together.
Yeah.
So then we were able to basically come together and decide like we were going to work things out.
Mhm.
I didn't put the ring back on until he reproposed a certain amount of time later, where we kind of figured out that we were going to do this. Then eventually we did get married, but we were together 10 years before we got married.
Mhm.
So then in that year, a lot of things happened. It was so crazy. It was like all of a sudden, yes, I was more important because I was a wife. But then all
Mm.
of a sudden, all the secrets started coming out. Have you ever seen that identity show where it was like, who the bleep did I marry? That's how I
No.
felt.
Okay.
That's how I felt. I was like,
Okay.
what the heck? Like, who is
Uh,
this person I've known for this long? Like, he's been
right.
hiding all these things. And basically, it was like, well, that was before we were married, so it didn't count. And I was like, no. And then he developed a cocaine problem. And
Oh
then it was
gosh.
like,
Yeah.
okay, wait, no,
Oh, wow.
this is not what I wanted. So that was a huge thing where it was like everything came in at once.
Uh-huh.
And it was basically the universe putting it all in front of me and saying, is this truly what you want? And I felt how it felt to self-abandon. And but
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
realized at that point that was my conditioning.
Yeah.
And here's like a big thing that I'm taking into what I am bringing to the world now is the courage to come home to ourselves,
Yeah.
to wake up to the fact of this is not who I am. These are just all the identities that I've accumulated over time.
Mhm.
And that's not truly who I am to my
Right.
core. And what I like to tell people is it's not that life is going to be totally all rainbows and butterflies. No, but you have to be able to develop the capacity to experience the range of things, to
That's right.
experience the range of discomfort, but that the range of joy, right? The range
Mhm.
of love
Mhm.
in all the different areas. Because if you can't handle the pain that you've experienced and be able to process that, you'll never be able to experience love that is truly meant for you, also, and that you're here to experience. So to be able to like think about, okay, life's not going to be all rainbows and butterflies, but if you are waking up and you're miserable, if it is an everyday struggle, you are holding on to something that is not
Yeah.
meant to stay. Like
Yeah.
people and things in our lives are meant to be there for a season and they are not meant to be forever. But I feel like we've all been conditioned for codependency. And I feel like something recently that I kind of discovered that I feel like we're not having enough conversation about is what were you taught that is love? You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
because think about so many people were taught different things about love. And like I said, a lot of us were taught codependency. So we were taught that, well, I have to be a certain way and things have to be a certain way for this to be love, right? And for me to feel loved and for me to accept love. And we all have a different variation of that depending on what we've experienced. And I've realized over the years of just kind of peeling off the layers
Yeah.
of who I'm not, but also the identities that I did pick up
Yeah.
and why. And to be able to acknowledge where those came from and to be able to acknowledge like how you get into those patterns. It's like those grooves that your brain makes, those neural pathways that you make that you will fall into if you aren't conscious of it. So it's like our journey is just waking up more and more to everything that we're not and really feeling into and owning unapologetic everything that we actually are and everyone and everything that's meant to fuel that in our lives will stay because we like start to cling to everyone and everything.
So here's some things that are coming through in playing it back and um, listening to this story. You were shown in a way what the world was meant to be like, right? So our families kind of teach us what the world was meant or how the world functions to the best that we know, because you only know what you know till you figure it out for yourself. And one crazy example that I love is like if a baby saw a human get up and start to fly around a room, they would just understand that as what it is. They wouldn't question it. So this is what's happening is we experience, but we arrive through the womb, through life as this pure version of self. And so listening to you in all of this, it's we're being shown different things to continue to remember who we are, right? So it's not so much a discovering through a myriad of experiences who you are. It's always like slowing down and going back to within to check and see if it's aligned or not. But as children, we may not have that consciousness yet. And, you know, certainly, like, I have young children, and sometimes I'm just a crazy person just trying to get through the day, never mind teach, like, holistic self-awareness. But it's a disservice, and part of, you know, what I'm seeing in the online coaching industry and a lot of the language is actually bringing that in so that we show up as ourselves for ourselves and have that impact to others. And as more people partake in this, then we're changing, um, the next generation's ability to kinda get there sooner.
Yes, and basically you become who you needed at some point in time. And I will tell you, back then, I did not have anybody that was conscious in my life, and honestly, I looked around at the relationships in my life and I thought, "Okay,
Mhm.
well, mine's not that bad." You know, and
Yeah, sure, yeah.
I never
Mhm,
felt this, like, full and amazing, like, feeling of, "Oh my gosh, this is my soulmate life partner, blah, blah, blah." I'm
mhm.
like, "Oh, he's just not that bad," right? Like, he's not them.
And he's
And
also all you knew, right? Like, from
yes,
15 to about age 30 maybe by the sounds of the timeline? Like,
27, yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's just all you know, so you're just kinda in it and doing it and, you know, not sure even if you see something that might be so-called better, you're not sure that it necessarily is because you're in your own experience and trying to make that work.
Well, and I'm like a very loyal person to fault like that though, where like even if I saw quote quote better, I wouldn't have seen it because I have blinders on.
Mm,
And
mhm,
I'm very like protective of the relationship that I'm in, you know, and there was even a point that I had to choose between him and my family because I
mhm,
have this big, really close, but very opinionated family. And that made it really difficult. And this is where I check myself all the time of like where I need to have boundaries is to allow people the space to figure it out. Like let them
mhm, mhm.
air it out, let them get some air. And then when they're ready to come up for air, like, hey, I'm here to help you work through whatever you're going through, but to really try to not overstep things and to not deny them that experience. Cause that's the
Yeah,
thing is that
their
my
own learning.
family yes, my
Yeah,
family had a lot of opinions, but it
mhm,
it only came from, like, this outside perspective, which was the lens that they lived their life through,
yeah,
and not my own experience of, like, what I experienced behind closed doors, you know, and it
mm,
wasn't the
mhm,
same. That's the thing is that in the end, there were some things that did end up manifesting to be true,
mhm.
but it was never true up until that point, you
Oh,
know,
okay.
and the reasonings, stuff
Uh-huh,
like that. So then
okay.
it was kinda like
You
really
were only
being o
getting pieces of the story as you went, right? And so it's hard to listen to somebody else's version when they don't know all of it or it hasn't happened yet, and, you know, and you're just trying to do your best with what you know at the time, which I think is what you're saying with you're who you need to be in any given moment, but it can lead you to who you're becoming and to what's coming next, and the time depends on how receptive you can drop in
yeah,
and appreciate the lessons that are coming, right?
yeah.
Like, I mean, I was in a 8-year bad relationship, and it just takes the time it takes, and a girlfriend at the time was in a also in a bad one, and I remember her saying, like, "Mia, when am I gonna know?" I said, "Sweetie, you're just gonna know when you know, like, you have to get there in your own time."
Yep, and I tell that to everyone, you know, and even other people that I come across, I'm like, just know that you are valuable and that you will get whatever you tolerate. It's not about
Mhm,
what you, somebody said to me recently, said, I don't understand what I did to deserve this.
mhm,
And I said, it's not about if you deserve it or not. It's why are you tolerating it? Why do you think that's what you deserve by choosing it? So I wish somebody back then could sit me down and ask me these questions, not tell me what to do.
mhm,
And here's the interesting part of all that is that I love how our awakening happens for some people, at least for me, it did in layers to where I
mhm,
became a certain amount of conscious
mhm,
after I decided I wanted a divorce, right? Totally uprooted my life. Like, this is funny as I like take a wrecking ball to my life every 10 years, right? So totally uprooted everything, sold my house, gave him like everything, paid
just to
him
get
off.
away. Yeah,
Yes, yes, just to
just
get
go.
away. And then I switched departments too. I changed departments at work. And
Mhm,
so then I had a whole different scenery. And
mhm,
I was going to therapy and everything. But it's so interesting that multiple times that I've gone to therapy, I have such a different experience than other people. And multiple times, basically, I've gone in this like crisis mode and just
mhm,
really needed somebody to give me this like really blunt perspective. Like, I love men therapists because they give it to me straight. They don't sugarcoat things. I
yeah,
had tried to go see a therapist when we had broken up. And it was like this older lady that was like, well, he doesn't seem like a bad guy.
oh
Maybe
boy.
he's just drinking too much. And
Uh-huh,
here's
uh-huh,
some activities you could do that don't involve alcohol. And I was like, what?
mm,
Okay. And then these two other male therapists that I've been to,
mhm,
in the years since then, they both are like, okay, you have a good head on your shoulders. You seem like a very mature, responsible person. You just have to not let people manipulate you. Right.
mhm,
And it takes two. And it was so funny when I walked into therapy. It was literally like the day after I filed for divorce. I walked in and I was like, I think I'm crazy.
mhm,
It's like,
yeah,
okay, let's unpack that a little bit. And then he says, you know that it takes two. And like logically I knew that,
mhm, mhm,
but like internally I
mhm,
didn't know that. And it was like I was hearing that for the first time and I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah," because I couldn't understand why I couldn't make it work. And he's like, "Because
mhm,
it's a two people to make it work, two people to break it." And I was
mhm,
like,
mhm,
"Oh, okay." So became more conscious of things. But it's interesting how this happens though, because then you just start to become more conscious of the world outside you,
mhm,
not necessarily your internal world. And all
mhm,
that did
yeah,
was fuel almost like me focus on the external world. Like then you get so obsessed with figuring everyone else out
mhm,
and not necessarily yourself. So, of course, then I'm still in healthcare. Like, yes, I switched departments. But it was that, like, nagging thing in my gut, that, like, baseline level of dissatisfaction that I didn't know how to trust because it was so loud and obnoxious in my marriage that I couldn't ignore it.
mhm,
But then it still existed after my marriage, but to such a lesser extreme that then I didn't really know what that was. I thought it was just, okay, maybe I just need to try something different. I didn't even consider that that wasn't the career for me until years later. And then finally, like a couple years before COVID, it was like, okay, is this really it for me? Right. And the big thing for me was I was dating someone with a toddler, and her favorite thing was some damn YouTube channel of these kids opening up toy packages.
oh yeah, ugh, yeah,
Okay. She
mhm,
called it like the poppy eggs because they were when Trolls came out.
yeah,
And these kids are making millions of dollars. And I was like, oh my gosh. That
uh-huh,
was like another stage of my awakening of
uh-huh.
what am I doing?
Alternative careers, right? Like if a kid can reach a YouTube channel of significant revenue, what other opportunities are out there that I'm not seeing? So here from age 15 to 27, tasked with not being a people pleaser, not carrying that pressure that you described as the golden child in the family, and then releasing that, and a big experience and very cathartic. Like it's so empowering when you finally say, no more, I'm done, and stand up for yourself and comfortably, like not being a dick, right? Like not being super angry or anything about it, but just very certain and
Yeah.
bringing closure. And now you've kind of removed the first layer of the fog and you're like, oh, look at what I just did. Yeah. But it's like, okay, no, we're just getting started actually.
Well,
And that was
and
like
that's
the first initiation, right?
exactly the first initiation. And you talk about like, oh, not being a
Yeah,
people pleaser. And I was only aware of the surface level people pleasing,
yeah,
right?
sure. Mhm.
And so then further into healthcare, it's all started to kind of
Yeah.
like fit of where I was still self-abandoning.
Uh-huh.
And that
Uh-huh.
was in my career. And I said this in a podcast a couple episodes ago that my sister caught, and that was kind of cool that she caught it. Was that when you're in a situation, you can't believe you have to develop this awareness of like what you can believe, right? And I acknowledged that why I was so like closed off to certain things, like believing anything else. But it's because I couldn't believe anything else because then I couldn't exist in that space still. If I started opening up the door
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
more alternative medicine stuff, because there was
Yeah.
I had some interest. I love to like think outside the box. I love to exist outside the box.
Mhm,
And I
mhm,
love
mhm.
all the alternative things that exist in the world, but there was part of me that was so resistant to fully ever diving into that. So I would dabble in it in my spare
Mhm.
time. And then it would like it would just wouldn't make sense because then I would come back to work and it's like
Yeah.
I couldn't practice any of this,
Yeah.
and I was forced to push what narrative I was being told to exist in that space. Well, it wasn't until I completely left it that I understood why that was, because then I wouldn't have been able to exist in that space anymore because that's what started happening. That is literally what started happening,
Yeah.
especially with when COVID came down and all the vaccine stuff came down. And then it was like
Yeah.
it created this huge divide. And
Mhm,
what I
mhm,
realized is that I had no idea how deep my like fear of belonging
mm,
went,
mm.
because that's the thing is that yes, I was able to leave a marriage, which is very scary for some people,
Yeah.
is to be a single person, especially for someone like me in this family full of married people with kids, right? Like everyone in my sphere was almost always married with kids. So to be able to step outside that, right? And be like, okay, well, if I'm not a married person, I'll be a single person, right? To
Mhm,
be
mhm.
okay with being by yourself. But then I still clung to the identity of nursing because
Yeah.
then that's like people that kind of understood me. And then once COVID hit, it created this huge divide. And now all of a sudden, all the people that like understood me and where I felt like I belonged, I didn't anymore.
Mhm,
And I didn't realize how much I was like dependent on that until it was gone. And then I was like, oh man, like who am I
mhm.
now?
Who am I now? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I was wild, and I never thought I was so attached to that,
Mm.
like, title at all, and then since then, I've had such that's actually been to my detriment, so I've pendulum swung in, like, all freaking ways in life, okay?
Yeah.
So then when I left nursing, I, like, completely went the opposite direction, and I had such a hard time owning anything in particular. So my journey with
Oh, okay.
coaching has been interesting because I went to the life coach school
Mhm,
and I got certified through them. And at
mhm,
the end, you can choose the entrepreneur route or the corporate route. So I chose the entrepreneur route,
mhm,
but it just was weird because it was like I'm learning all this stuff and they like literally like lay it all out for you to do it like this. And
mhm.
it didn't fit.
Didn't fit.
And I
Yeah.
had so much resistance against it.
Yeah.
So I didn't have people at that time in my life that were more spiritual or were more like tapped in to be able to explain to me that's
Mhm.
because it's not in alignment with you.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't figure out why I couldn't own that. And then what I learned in life coach school, learned a lot of awesome concepts, but I couldn't own that as my own either. Where I'm
Mhm,
like, yeah, it works, but it's not deep enough. Because they go to this like whole formula of circumstance is always neutral. Then you have a thought about it. Then you have an emotion about it.
mhm,
Then you have
mhm.
a reaction to it, which creates basically your result, an action that creates a result. And I'm like, yeah, but there's something deeper.
Yeah.
Well, that's because our brain is in theta until age 7. So until age 7, we are like a computer hard drive,
Yeah.
just taking stuff in and storing
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And then that is the lens that we see everything in the rest of our lives. So it's deeper. Your thoughts are coming from something that's so deeply rooted. So you can't just change the thought that comes up. That's not how that works. And it
Mhm.
was interesting that I was really like grabbing for straws to try to find some like ground, right?
Mhm.
And I had consciously like started working less. I had a plan, okay, that I was
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
start stepping away from
Transition.
nursing.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
No, the universe was like, nope, we're going to slam that door in your face. So I was
Just
working with a
hurry
lot
up
of,
already. Let's go. I've
so
taken too long. Things are
I was
waiting.
attend, I was attending every coaching call I could. And I was like, just like, somebody please help me. Somebody please guide me. And this is why I said,
Yeah,
like, to be able to become someone you needed, where
yeah.
somebody that could objectively sit there and be like,
Yeah, right,
okay,
right.
okay, and ask me questions and not just tell me things. Where I would go to all these coaching calls and they would be like, well, at the end, they'd be like, well, you really need to change your thoughts associated with that. Not ask me why the
Yeah.
heck I still think I need to stay in that circumstance. So, yes, the
Mm,
circumstance is neutral, but sometimes it's also the circumstance isn't the place you belong anymore, you know?
mhm,
So, why are you choosing that still? So now I started switching from that place of like obsessing about the world outside me,
yeah,
right? We're like, we look at everyone else and we think about like, oh, this is why everyone's doing this, as opposed to why am I existing in this space? And then I realized how much I was taking I was taking in people's power by like them willingly giving it to me when they would come to me for advice and perspective.
mhm,
And I was totally unaware of that. And then I learned that in life coaching school and I was like, ugh, I don't want to take people's power away. Like I want to empower them,
yeah,
you know? So then I completely shifted the way I started operating where okay, people will come to me for advice. And then I would start kind of just sitting back and just trying to let them figure it out. Because here's the thing is
yeah,
I know that it didn't matter what people said to me. I knew that I had to feel into what felt right for me. And I legitimately have like a visceral response for things and people that aren't meant for me.
mhm.
And you have to peel back all the layers of belonging though, of people pleasing, of like the
Of that
titles,
internal
all that.
programming from up to age 7. Yeah,
You
yeah,
have to peel that back in order to differentiate what is trauma and what is alignment.
yeah.
So I went to this course a couple weekends ago that was Align Speak to Sell. And one of the ladies that was teaching the course said something that just completely changed her life. And I love that once you start really stepping into your path and your power and just kind of owning things that are authentically meant for you, and you start to
Mhm.
align with the people that
Yeah,
are helping you get to the next phase. So
yeah,
I sometimes like feel and experience things I don't really know how to put into words.
yeah.
And then I will meet somebody that can explain it. So she had said something that changed her business, everything for her was the question is it your superpower or your kryptonite? And she realized that what she thought was her superpower was actually her kryptonite, was actually a trauma response.
Mm,
So to being able to
mhm,
differentiate that, and that's
mhm,
exactly what I have discovered,
yeah.
where some of these things, like I said, the identities, where I used to be the group mom and I used to just own that like a badge of honor, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
oh, I just know I'm the group mom. I'm going to take responsibility for everyone. But
Mhm,
that 1000% was an identity that I ended up having to take on as a kid because my parents put so much responsibility on us at a young age. It's like,
mhm,
"Oh, you're tall enough to reach the knobs, you can do your own laundry now. Oh, you're strong enough to pick up a power tool, you can go outside and work." You
mhm,
know?
mhm,
And realizing that actually wasn't me, and I was able to get to the root of my dissatisfaction that existed for years upon years. It's because I was taking on these roles that weren't authentically me,
yeah.
which the group mom, I am super empathic and caring, but that's just attached to my feminine. That's not a part of like my
Mhm,
actual persona and identity, right? And my who I am to a soul level is free spirited. You
mhm,
know, I have all the elements in my chart. I have a lot of like fire and air. So I don't want to be contained. And here's the thing is I was existing for so many years in these freaking containers that
Mhm.
I was like agreeing to be in. That's the thing is that's where you take your power back instead of being like, "Oh, well, I had to." No, I chose to, but it's just because I didn't know any better. But once you know better, it is your duty to do better. So now I am super intentional about friendships and surroundings where it's like I will acknowledge where I feel that come back up. I mean, this summer I went and I was, doing a bunch of stuff with my family
Mhm.
and we had, taken a trip and everything. And I caught myself. I caught myself almost doing it
In
to
an
where
old role.
my
Yeah.
yes, my
Yeah.
sister, and especially with people that you were very energetically
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
enmeshed with.
Yeah.
And my sister was really upset about something. And I literally caught myself
Mhm.
wanting to fix it for her.
Mhm.
And I was like, no, she needs to experience this discomfort because she needs to figure her shit out for herself.
Yeah. So what's interesting
So
in all of
being more
this
conscious of that.
is, what I'm hearing is you're realizing these different strengths that you have and the beauty and the possible service that they have, but they don't define or limit the overall picture of who you are. And then we have to self-manage how we use these skills and tools, um, in I don't know if it's like self-preservation, but appreciation and, um, like, energetic managing, right? So that
Mhm.
they're not taken advantage of, so that in the opportunity for manipulation, one of those beautiful strengths doesn't, creep up over the others. Because like, everything can serve it in a very connecting way. Like being a people pleaser can be functional in certain circumstances, provided that you can be in charge of those circumstances and, have the authority, the awareness to assert the authority that you want to use them in that way. So here's where everything that you've described is like showing you these different attributes, characteristics, strengths, values that you have. And now you're sifting through them a few at a time, one at a time, and then to really, um, get to know them more, get to, like, harness how you use them more, you have to be tested. So the situation with your sister is an opportunity of like, "Hey, Jessica, here comes the people pleasing, the group mom
Mhm.
situation, what are you gonna do?" And, we can process these things, we can journal them, but like you say, reprogramming a neural pathway means being tested in an active, um, uncontrolled situation where you get the body reaction, where you get, the automatic decades long, familiarity and all of
Mhm.
that, and so the rise to consciousness is layered. It does reveal more and more and more as you go, and it does cause big change in life because it's harder to go back every time,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like I mean, I'm still working full time, and there's times where I get so deep into this beautiful kind of coaching and heart healing and, you know sort of on the other side, like outside the two-dimensional world, and then you kind of wake up as though you were in a dream and you're like, "Oh, right, we're still on Earth and we're still in these bodies and like, held down by gravity." But as you experience that more, you start to integrate these sides together and it leads you further or closer to your true self, like you're saying, and into what you want to do, which is now, by the looks of it, coaching. So, like, from, these very structured lifestyles into this completely free lifestyle. And we haven't even got to the part yet, listeners, where Jessica sold off everything a second
Yeah. Yeah.
time and relocated her life in pursuit of your true authenticity and um, the empowered service of your skills and of your aligned values to
Well,
take
that's where I
care of
was
yourself. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's where I was saying that I didn't realize there was an entirely different level of the
Yeah.
self-abandonment and the people pleasing.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's like, because so many of us, our parents did the best they knew
Hmm.
with that time, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
I
Yep.
feel like the way the earth is evolving right now
Hmm.
is that more people are waking up to breaking all those generational patterns.
Yeah.
So I feel like as a collective, we've all been conditioned for codependency and we all have a lot of abandonment wounds, right? And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
I didn't realize how much I was self abandoning staying in that career because
Hmm.
I felt that it wasn't for me. And here's been my journey of trusting. Like
And
part of coming
courage,
home,
right?
yes,
So
part of coming home to
self
yourself.
abandoning, yeah, is not being true to what you know is inside, even if you don't know what it is,
Hmm.
because then you're not making space for that to get louder, and it will get louder
Oh,
internally
yes.
and externally until and if, because not everybody does, you get the insight, right? Like you lock in the lesson and then start to show up differently after.
Well, I feel like it's also like for everyone it's different because it depends on obviously the journey that you chose before you came here, but what you become attuned to.
Mhm,
So, because I worked in a career that was all about body, right? All about the
mhm,
human body, all about health, I was very in tune with my health and my body, where I did compartmentalize my emotions a lot. And I was conditioned to tolerate a lot of discomfort.
mhm,
So then that's that one of those other things, though. Is it your kryptonite or your superpower?
mhm,
Well, experiencing discomfort is a little bit of my kryptonite because then I end up staying longer in things because discomfort is familiar for me.
mhm, mhm.
So then in my career, that's what started happening where, okay, I switched departments and it seemed good for a while, but then it's like the same shit, different place would happen
Yeah.
where I would experience the same really stressful, like not okay circumstances with, you know, I was in the cardiac ICU and I had like 5 cardiac ICU patients to just myself because somebody went to lunch and somebody took their patient to CT. And now all of a sudden I'm
Mhm,
responsible for all these patients. I can't
mhm,
even leave the monitor because that's the
mhm,
only way I can watch all 5 of them.
mhm.
And then to another department. Then, okay, a manager created a lot of really unsafe circumstances. And here's the thing is I am very, very passionate about people and
Mhm.
about treating every person like my friend or my family member or how I would want to be taken care of. And then my coworkers like my family. So I kept getting into these situations, the same place, different stuff, where it was the same circumstance where it's like I'm putting myself in a corner. I'm getting backed into a corner every time. So instead of getting really serious about, okay, what other path is meant for me, I would just change hospitals, change departments.
Sure.
But the time frame that started happening got smaller and smaller, shorter and shorter. And so then what do you know? COVID came and then it came this massive divide within healthcare. And now I'm like, I don't like when I have to choose a side because I'm like, why do I have to choose a side? Why can't I just choose me? And so that's what
Mhm.
it came down to is it came down to this fork in the road. And I started waking up to my patterns. That's the other thing is that
Yeah.
we get so deep in our life today, right? So in the like everyday, like hamster wheel, right?
Yeah. Mhm,
And it's really important to create that stillness, which
mhm,
is something I didn't know about until I started life coaching, until I started working with a mindset coach, where I created a lot more stillness, where I'm zooming out of all the everyday to do list bullcrap.
yeah,
And
the
I'm
noise.
actually, yeah, and I'm actually
Mhm,
thinking about like, okay, wait, is this what I want? What do I want? What does it look like? What does it feel like? And feeling into that and getting more familiar with what I truly want to
yeah,
my core level, and to really kind of like explore other options.
yeah,
So then I got to that point where I'm like, okay, I know this isn't aligned for me. I'm going to, create this like kind of exit strategy. But then the universe came in and it came down really hard. And so I just said, like, I had such a visceral response from my body. I would sit in my car before going into work and I would literally have to have a pep talk with myself. I would have to do some deep breathing. I would have to like get centered before I go in because I knew it was to that point that my body was so reactive to it.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is that I did have kind of random medical issues happen, but no like giant big chronic illness.
So it's interesting because you're talking about the familiarity of body discomfort and the unfamiliarity of emotional discomfort. And now the emotional discomfort is coming out in the body, right? As
Mhm.
like yet another signal or trying to get your attention.
And so then that's what I talk to a lot of people about now, where trying to really help people get back to really listening to their body. Because here's the
Mhm.
thing is that pain is a late sign.
Right.
Pain means our body
Yeah.
has been trying to tell us for something for a long time.
Yeah.
And then chronic illness is even later sign than that, right? And then injury is like a flat out, like
Mhm.
that's like the universe slamming a door in your
Mhm.
face.
Mhm.
Like somebody in the sauna the other night was telling me that somebody they know is in like a terrible marriage and so crazy stuff. And he literally broke both of his ankles at the trampoline park with his kids. And I was like, if that is not a sign from the
Mhm.
universe for you to literally stop the direction you're going, I don't know what is.
Mhm.
So getting to that point where I acknowledged that one of the big patterns for me in all areas of my life. Because here's the thing is we
Mhm.
like to talk about things like they're separate, but they're
Mhm.
not.
Mhm. Mhm.
Your friendships, your
Yeah.
romantic relationships, your
Yeah.
family, and your career all are connected. So for me, my pattern was staying in unaligned situations to the point where I started to have the physical discomfort. And then something would happen where I would be at a fork in the road and it'd be like, are you going to self abandon or are you going to choose yourself,
Mhm.
regardless of the consequences, and really choose courage to go whatever direction you feel is right? So then I acknowledged that. And so I said, okay, I'm just going to let whatever happened happened. So it got to the point where it was like, okay, well, yeah, you could file an exemption, but there was a lot of strings attached. And I was like, no,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna fight this. Like, this is dumb. I should not have to fight what I feel is right for me. And it was like,
Mhm.
I should not have to ask an employer to approve or deny my beliefs,
Mhm.
because that's
Mhm.
what the exemptions were. And then you still had to do testing and all kinds of
Mhm.
crazy stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that either. So I said, fine, do whatever you have to do. I threw my hands up and I said, universe, you're in charge now. Right. And then
Show
it
me the
kind of
next
came,
step.
well, not even that, of just like, I surrender to
Mhm.
whatever is meant for me. Right. And so then, okay, my job is gone. And now I'm like, all right, now I'm unemployed and I have a house payment. So
Mhm.
I had
Mhm.
already been in this phase of wanting to leave California as it was. And my mom and I had been
Mhm.
talking about it for a while. I went and visited Texas because I had a friend here, and it
Mhm.
wasn't as far as the East Coast. So that's why like
Mhm.
Texas was literally a middle point.
Mhm.
And I knew that Texas would be like the first step. And I was like, okay, I'm open to whatever is meant for me in the future. Right. So I was going to take a job here and I was going to buy a house here. And then it just didn't feel right. And also things didn't go through. Like I
Mhm.
gave them my
Right.
card information 3 times to put my like down payment, my like thing for the house,
Mhm.
and it wouldn't go through.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, if that's not a sign, I don't know what is. So then I
Mhm.
canceled that,
Mhm.
decided I wasn't going to do that. I was thinking about renting, but I couldn't fathom renting a place, choosing to have to stay somewhere for a year when I'd never seen the house, never seen the neighborhood, because
Mhm.
everything was
Mhm.
happening so fast that I had to
Yeah.
make decisions. And same kind of thing though, is that then nothing was aligning where it was like, okay, well, my escrow is going to close around this time. I need movers to come. I need to do this and that. And it wasn't aligning with like, oh, the house might be available this time. I'm like, that doesn't work for me
Mhm.
because I
Mhm.
sold the majority of my stuff. But what
Mhm.
I had left, I was going to send to Texas with movers and put it in a storage unit. So
Mhm.
then, sorry,
Okay.
my dog was like obsessively itching. Um, so then nothing was aligning. So I said, okay, well, I'm just going to send it to storage. And I decided I was going to do the RV life. Well, I had to
Mhm.
get another car. I had to find a
Mhm.
trailer. Like
Mhm.
all that stuff had to align, and it did, and it worked out. And it's been such a crazy adventure since then. And I actually didn't get to Texas for another like 5 months. And that was because of a lot of life stuff. So the holidays came up and I said, okay, went to LA and I was with my family in LA for Thanksgiving. Well, then I went
Mhm.
to San Diego for Christmas and was
Mhm.
there. And Christmas Eve, I got my purse stolen at the gym.
Mm.
I had no car keys, no trailer keys, no
Mhm.
IDs,
Mhm.
nothing. I
Mhm.
literally had
Mhm.
everything taken. I was planning on being on the road to Texas,
The next day.
no, January 1st,
Oh,
like right
okay.
after
Yep.
Christmas.
Yep.
Nope, couldn't do that. And then there was nowhere
Mhm.
to stay in Texas and San Diego because of the RV park restrictions and stuff like that. So I was like couch surfing for a while, like at my sister's house with my dog. And then I finally, my cousin who lives in a different county down there, he has property. So I was able to park my trailer out there. So here I am with my dog living in in my cousin's backyard in my trailer. They came and stole my identity. So
Mhm.
then I had this craziness for months of like them canceling my cards and
Mhm.
ordering new cards
Mhm.
in and sending it to their PO box, changing my
Mhm.
mailing address, like unlocking
Mhm.
my credit, just crazy
Mhm.
stuff. So then I
Wow.
felt like I couldn't leave California yet. And that was interesting because then here I am not working.
Mhm.
And I did not realize how attached to how addicted to busy I was.
Mhm.
Another pattern.
Yeah.
So then it's like,
Another layer. Yeah.
and the layers just kept they started
Mhm.
coming quicker and quicker. So then
Mhm.
I realized a lot of stuff when I lived in Southern California, the layer of how attached I was not only to the identity and the belonging of nursing, but also to being busy where like that's where that was my purpose. Because anything we attach ourselves to is something that's going to be taken from us at some point in time just to show us that that's not who and what we are.
Mhm.
So navigating that, and then my family when I was down there was like, "Oh, can you help me with my dog? Oh, can you help me with my kid and this and that?" And like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Ah," because here I was so used to living in my own house, in
Mhm.
my own city where none of my family lived in the same city as I did.
Right. Right.
So I very much did my own life and my own space. So now I don't have my own space and my own life anymore. And it was like suffocating for me. And as much as I love my family and I loved spending every moment with them, but I was ready for something else. So
Mhm.
I literally had everything all packed up and hit the road at like 10 p.m. on like March the 30th and was at the RV park on April 1st by like
Mhm.
5 p.m. And I
Mhm.
hadn't even seen that RV park. I'd never been to it. I literally just towed my trailer straight to it.
Mhm.
And then I ended up staying there for a year and I ended up figuring a lot of stuff out. So, like I said, once you cut all the ties that are binding you, and
Yeah.
for me, the biggest one was my career. I did
Mhm.
not realize how much that was keeping me small and bound to so many things that truly weren't meant for me for the future.
Yeah.
So after I like let that go and then came here and had a lot of like space, things are just like I feel like I'm on like a speed train of ascension.
Mhm. That's fun. Yeah. You you don't know what opportunities are available unless you start to make space for them to show up.
Yes.
And this
Yes.
is, we call that stepping into the unknown.
Yeah.
But it like the unknown is and isn't because it will show itself to you and it is safe and abundant and just so full of possibility. And then in that case it's a bit of pick your own adventure, um, but you do it in a higher conscious awareness where it means that you don't necessarily pursue every opportunity that becomes available, right? So
Oh my gosh. Yes.
in what you've described, these opportunities were here, without a job, without a house, available to the family to fall back into that group mom position, to fall back into that busyness pattern. But because of, the letting go, now you're like, oh, this isn't the opportunities that I want, although they could have been a year before, right? And that's so it's freedom. It's really freedom to live life in the way that you want. And, one piece of this that, I'm still kinda hanging on to is how things get shown along the way. So those
Mm,
YouTube videos opening up your, perception, or, like a real example of what else is possible outside
mhm,
of the 9 to 5, and sort of once you drink the Kool-Aid, you do want more of it. You do wanna experience, explore, and see, and you can start to show up and improve those skills to make the choices that lead you into opportunities that you really, really want. And it sounds like, you had this coaching desire, but it was a matter of really making it your own. So again, opportunity
mm,
was the school, and great, kind of foundations and
mhm,
good information and that sort of thing, but not in the highest alignment that you would want. So there's there's pieces where we arrive in the pure sense, we're collecting the stickiness, like you said, then we're coming back to it, and the tests are all the ways that we um, show up at different turn points. And so what I'm trying to describe here is like, it's the buffet and you know what you like, but you don't know what else you like unless you try it.
mhm. Well, and that's where okay, so when I got fired, all that stuff happened. I was like, just I was so fired up. I was so fired up.
Sure, yeah, excited.
And
Like, what's coming? How can I take advantage, or, what can I get ready
well, and
for?
then the crazy thing was is that so I told my mom, I was like, I'm gonna lead a freaking revolution. Because one
Mhm.
of the biggest things that was so motivating for me, but also so heartbreaking, was to work not only in the career that I did, that I saw that just every day like death, despair,
Yeah,
darkness,
yeah,
like
yeah.
everybody just in their stuff. But how it bled into everything else. It wasn't just the patients. There was a lot of the staff were just as chronically
Yep,
ill and miserable as the
yep,
patients. And I
yep.
just kept looking around. My girlfriend and I, like, this is what I love about like your soul tribe, right? Like, I
Mhm,
feel like
mhm,
we've totally been on this awakening journey, like side by side each other,
mhm.
in various ways. And we would be at work and we would both sit there and we'd look around and be like, gosh, this just isn't it. This isn't it. And like really living in that survival mode and in
Mhm,
fear so much and
mhm,
lack. And I was like, no, I
mhm.
I refuse to subscribe to this. And so I told my mom, I'm like, I'm gonna lead a freaking revolution. But I didn't know what or how. Like
Sure.
I said, I created so much space. And the nice thing was, and this is what I wish I could just tell more people to embody
Mhm,
as much as possible, is if you get the opportunity to create a lot of space in your life where you don't have to go work a certain job, you don't have to have certain like societal
mhm,
responsibilities,
mhm.
freaking take it and just literally enjoy every moment of it. Like vacation, get massages,
Yeah.
get in your best shape possible, right? Pick up some new habits that you're hobbies that you're passionate about. Like, so I created so much space and I just allowed myself to be scattered as hell. I
Mhm,
was so scattered. I was like, okay. And all these opportunities kept coming in for me. And I was like, maybe, maybe not, maybe not. And so that was cool that I was able to like, okay, just kind of like dabble in different things to see
mhm,
what did align and what didn't. And I was able to really trust that knowing
mhm,
that I had inside that, okay, when I feel this, that means it's not for me. The discomfort doesn't mean that I need to stay there. The
mhm,
discomfort means that this is not in alignment with me. So,
mhm,
really, like feeling into my response to things and trusting that I know what's best for me. So created a lot of space, a lot of like just kind of having fun basically. Like I came to Texas, was networking and making friends and just enjoying my freaking life and having
mhm,
no
mhm.
guilt or shame to that because so many people were projecting so much fear on me. They were like,
Oh, yeah.
"Well,
Yeah.
shouldn't you be working and shouldn't you be
Mhm,
doing this? And
mhm,
what about
mhm,
money?" I'm like,
mhm, mhm.
I have always figured it out. It has
Yeah,
always worked
yeah,
out. So
yeah.
then I read Brene Brown's book, Dare to
Mhm,
Lead, and it was
mhm,
so good. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to lead a courage revolution. Because if you think about like, what is it that people come to you for? I'm not kidding. So many people, men and women, come to me when they're really struggling in this place of like lack and fear, and
mhm.
they just need someone else that sees them and believes in them. And I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And I want to talk to all the people about everything that they've overcome in their lives because they
Mhm.
chose themselves and they had the courage to stand outside and walk away from the crowd and what the hamster wheel of society says that we need to be doing with our lives, and to really inspire people to believe what they don't yet see and to
Yeah,
trust the desires that you have are there for a reason and that they actually exist for you on an ulterior timeline, that an alternate timeline that you just have to align to. And here's the thing that I've been unpacking in the last year specifically, that they don't involve you having to go get it or
mhm,
prove that you are worthy of it. You have
mhm.
to come home to yourself and know that you are intrinsically worthy just as you are. And no, girl, you don't need another damn certificate. You
Yeah,
don't need another damn degree.
yeah.
You know, you can feel into being fully worthy. And just the simple fact that you are you is what makes you qualified to do what you feel called to do.
This is the receivership piece, right? So, you know you have something, a beautiful gift to give, but you're all caught up in whether or not you really should.
Yes.
And this is opening to receiving that and just
Mm,
letting it flow over you and just like acclimatize and be okay with it without an expectation of the outcome. But just as our hair color is naturally given to us, you know, that feeling in your heart is naturally given to
mhm.
you on purpose. So just receive that as a gift and see where it leads. And we don't have to have these life blowing up moments. Like you can create
Exactly.
space and change. Pardon me, although they are fun. They are fun because, you know, you get to you I love moving because everything goes in and gets purged and then comes back out, and it freshens up the space, and there is something, but even at home, rearrange a drawer, reorganize a surface, and it all of a sudden, it just starts those little shifts where you can see things a little bit differently, um, and, you know, you do as much of that as you feel called to do, as you feel drawn to do, like, in your case, definitely, it was energizing and exciting and opportunistic, such good timing, um, you know, it's good to take advantage when you have those moments in life too,
Mhm.
but then you have that skill set so that regardless of what else comes in life, you still know that you can, um, make significant changes in safety, right? And be open to receiving them is how you will get them, so you know, it's been an incredible journey of you talking about your courage and how you're showing up in those moments, not knowing what was coming, but willing to find out. And if anybody's ever read a really good book, you want to know what finds out, what happens, right? You're just
Yeah.
so in it. And this is what our life experience is. And so when we aren't feeling safe, to go out and experience, there's the deeper work to drop in, to slow down and go into like maybe even a hibernating state where take a minute, take a mini sabbatical, if you will, not from necessarily a job or parenting or relationships, but finding time in the day to day to sit with yourself and reflect and you know observe different things and just ponder if you will to um, get the mind, body, and spirit tapping into something different. Because if we're overstimulated, if we're in that
Mm.
busy, then it's a numbing out, right? And this the stillness reveals, the stillness expands, and then can become all these like fun adventures like you've had, but can also just become like walking slower, eating
Oh,
slower,
1000%.
you know,
Oh my
like
gosh.
just yeah, just chilling out. And the beauty that comes from that is indescribable. Like, it's so powerful. It's so much bigger than you and so, like, fulfilling and peaceful, truly peaceful. And then from there, you just show up in a completely different way in the day-to-day stuff, which can lead to more and more opportunities, to make more change.
Well, and then to really acknowledge what's driving you.
Mhm,
Because that's the thing is that, you know, I had to get really brutally honest with myself about what was driving me. Was it my conditioning? Was it these limiting beliefs, you know?
mhm.
And here's the thing is that ultimately we want to get to the place that we are dependent on nothing to feel okay, right? And especially with the holidays coming and like everybody
Oh,
talking about
yeah.
family and things like that. It's like, but ultimately, you want to be able to exist in any space and be able to maintain your peace. But the thing is you have to create that for yourself.
Yeah.
So it is really getting honest with yourself of like, I didn't realize how much I was keeping myself busy, even when I wasn't working.
Mhm.
And I don't even understand when people say they're bored because I'm like, I am never bored. That is not a problem for me. If anything, I have to very consciously undo that. And now that I have created, it's so crazy how everything in our life
Mhm, mhm,
adds up and it's like it
mhm,
completely prepares you for the next phase and you don't even realize it. And this is where
mhm.
we have to detach ourselves from that knowing. Just know that this is for a reason.
Yeah.
So I've created these like amazingly still mornings where it's like very rare that I set an alarm. And, I open my blinds, I hang out with my dog, like we go walk the trail I don't take my phone or anything. I
Mhm,
take time eating my breakfast and doing all kinds of things in the morning where I used to wear this badge of honor of
mhm.
busy. Okay. I
A
used to
doer.
like Yes, I used
Yeah.
to feet at the ground, hit the ground at 4:45 in the
Yeah.
morning, and I don't stop till, like, I am literally, like, crashing when I got home from work kinda thing,
Mhm,
and I'm
mhm,
like, "No, I could never go back to that. I could never go
mhm.
back to it."
Yeah, yeah.
And that's been awesome for creating a business because then I create that framework because here's the thing, is if you can't be in the same energy of the environment that
That's
wasn't
right.
functional for you.
Yeah.
You have to take a moment to, like, kind of get recentered of, like, what does fit for me and work for me and create from that space. Because if you're already
Mhm.
in that space of lack and busy and proving your worth and
Yeah.
doing, you're only going to create a business that's going to lead to burnout as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, so instead, like, you use your business to play and to have fun and to
Mhm.
make it easy, right? To give it a life of its own and to take off in a way that, um, allows you to just stay very flexible and, like, I mean, I've made so many shifts in how I used to do things with my online space, and I can't even fathom how I hold all the pieces that I hold now while still working a full-time job and raising kids and everything.
That's wild.
But I say it 100 times a day. It's not. It's just because it's me being me. It's
Yeah.
me being in that alignment, right? So
Yeah.
I don't feel resentful. I don't feel overworked. And you guys, I don't pressure myself and like, I've dropped away from scarcity
Mhm.
so much, and it's maybe never ends, but it's like it's okay to rest, and it's okay to not push because that attachment, like you say, perpetuates nervous energy, and that defeats the purpose. So, like, just do it for fun, and it's soft, and it's like it's magical, and this, I think, is what they call flow, or if you're into sports, they call it the zone, and
Yeah.
you're just capable as much as you're breathing, and that takes courage too, because that was stepping into unknown. That was letting go of previous paradigms. That was letting go of, my strong Capricorn identity and the structured self that I've said before that my friends of 30 years, still make fun of me for. And I'm like, well, I've changed a little bit.
Well, for me, I that was also that place of that wasn't my true identity where I was at, because I used to be very
Yeah.
structured
Oh,
also.
yeah. Oh,
But
yeah.
here's the funny thing is that I'm a freaking Gemini. I'm not meant to be that way,
Yeah,
right?
but you adopted it because you were exposed to it, right?
Yes, and I realized that was like one of those other realizations through my awakening, and especially in the last couple of years
Mhm.
of I had to take accountability for why I was getting the results in my life,
Yes.
which for me was I was very much in my masculine energy because that's what
Mhm.
I was conditioned to
Yeah,
be in and do.
yeah,
So I had to start asking myself, what does that feel like? What does it look like to not be? So that's why I
yes.
had to completely take away all the doing because that's very masculine, and I had really had to feel into how to be, which
Mhm.
is in your feminine. So
Mhm.
now that I've created this space of like I can just be and I don't have to be doing anything, and I enjoy every minute of it. And
Mhm.
then that allows me to connect from a different space with people, which is super awesome. And then you just start to magnetize things in and you're not
Yeah,
chasing it because
yeah,
that was also part of my conditioning. If you want something, you go after it.
yeah,
You go
yeah,
get it. You
yeah,
grind, you hustle,
yeah,
you make it
yeah,
happen. And I'm like,
yeah,
no, it's exhausting. I don't want
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I'm in my soft girl era, okay?
It's well, and they go together, right? But it's that separation of you are not what you do.
Yes.
You are who you are what you be.
Yes.
You know, and in the being, you lead the doing, and it sounds like that's been a real big shift for both of us in how we show up and how we're
Huge.
creating our businesses and serving. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
huge.
yeah,
And
yeah.
one of the most beneficial, especially for your nervous system.
Oh my
I mean,
god.
how much has that improved
Yeah,
every
yeah.
area of your life? Like your
Mhm, mhm,
relationships, your
mhm.
you as a mom. I mean, I don't
Mhm,
have any kids yet, but that was one of my massive drivers of wanting to leave nursing is that I
mhm,
saw my mom friends and how exhausted and short
mhm.
they were. And I was like, that's not fair.
Yeah, yeah,
That is not fair. I do
mm,
not want that for my children, my future children,
yeah,
or my future spouse to be
yeah.
so drained every day and to just be like short and bitchy all the time. And I was like,
Mhm.
I don't want that for myself. And I don't want to have to miss holidays and kids' events. Like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah.
I want that freedom to be there for anything and everything that I can.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's available now. So, Jessica, is there anything you wanna, promote or offer or direct us to follow along and improve the courage, like, to practice that skill so that we can embody it and really, live the life that we want to live with
So
yeah.
your external reality will never change until you learn to master your internal reality. And so something that I talk about with a lot of people and I have coaching packages available or
Mhm,
individual coaching, and
mhm,
then I have a free Facebook group, the Courage
mhm,
Club. And what I've started focusing talking about is just really it starts with us. So coming home to yourself and having that awareness and then be able to look at other places in your life and be able to take accountability for your part in those things and be able to have the courage to take your power back
mhm.
because you are the creator of your reality and it can be whatever you want it to be. You just have to decide that you are ready to choose yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's so beautiful. Wonderful, well, I'll share the links in the episode description, and it's just been so beautiful to, have this conversation with you and hear the transformation of your life as
Mm.
a testament and example of what is very possible regardless of circumstance. Well
Yes,
done.
absolutely. Thank you
Yeah,
so much, Mia.
thank you.